So what? Where we at, man? What chapter we on?
Romans, man. What is
Doing
it?
the
Romans
Romans?
4, right?
Romans chapter 4, baby. Moving right along.
Romans chapter 4. Before we get into 4, let's recap what we went through past few weeks. We're gonna try to stay on course.
This time.
Moving forward,
That's never gonna happen.
we're gonna try to be responsible with our time and yours.
That's never gonna happen.
Try to stay on course, man.
I mean, we're responsible. It's always $1.20. They know that that's where they have to invest,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's alright. That's alright.
So chapter 3. We spoke about chapter 3 real quick.
I like verse 10. As it is written, there is none righteous, no, not one. I think that verse right there covers up what we read so far in Romans. That everybody is guilty before a holy God. You know?
The indictment of mankind, universally. Everybody is wicked, everybody falls short. All have sinned, right?
Yeah, verse 23, right? For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God.
Oh, that's an even better verse.
It's like, remember what was going on here. Paul is basically putting everyone on trial and proving to them that they are not worthy of God's righteousness. And the end of chapter 3 here is where we actually started to get some good news, where Paul is actually telling us, that how we can be saved, because we can't save ourselves, and we're all just wicked. But yeah, that's pretty much what we were talking about in 3, right?
Yeah, that last section you brought up is a plan that was apart from the law, right? A plan to rescue mankind, a plan for man to be in a righteous standing in front of God, and that plan was apart from the law, right? So you're thinking about his audience, his detractors. There's Jewish people there also, because he addressed the religious Jewish people, he addressed the ungodly, and he addressed the how would you call those people, the ungodly,
the pagan, the moralists.
the moralists.
Moralists.
That's what I was looking for. Yeah. The moralists. All right. So towards the end, he kind of got into this circumcision, right? Talking about circumcision and how Paul kind of spoke about circumcision, like, dog, it's past that, right? It's beyond that. And even back in chapter 2, he was talking about how circumcision isn't profitable, right? It's supposed to be an outward sign to reflect what's happening inside, right?
Correct.
And this circumcision, we know that the Jew in their culture, they held that at a very high regard. So I could imagine them listening to Paul like, what are you saying? And as we go into chapter 4, Paul kind of answers the question that what he's kicking, right? Justification by faith alone, it's in harmony with the Old Testament.
Yeah.
It's in harmony with the great men of the Jewish culture, you know what I'm saying? The forefathers. So I'm not saying anything that's off.
He's like, I'm not saying anything that's new.
That's new, right?
Right, it's like, this ain't nothing new. We live in a society where everybody want to be onto the new. Oh, I got this breakdown, I got this understanding, I got this new knowledge. But he's like, nah, man, what I'm giving to you, this is nothing new. And your forefathers knew about this. Your forefathers understood this. Yeah,
Who said that? If it's new, it ain't true.
And if it's true, it ain't new.
I heard that from Joe Fox.
Yeah, man.
I think that's the first time I heard him say that. Yeah. All right, man. So let's get into chapter 4. Let's go from 1 to 8.
To 8. And right here, he brings Abraham onto the stand, right? He's bringing the proof, and just so beautiful how Paul does it here. So let's start. It says, "What then shall we say that Abraham, our father, has found according to the flesh? For if Abraham was justified by works, he has something to boast about, but not before God. For what does the scripture say? Abraham believed God, and it was accounted to him for righteousness. Now to him who works, the wages are not counted as grace, but as debt. But to him who does not work, but believes on him who justifies the ungodly, his faith is accounted for righteousness. Just as David also describes the blessedness of the man to whom God imputes righteousness apart from works. Blessed are those whose lawless deeds are forgiven and whose sins are covered. Blessed is the man to whom the Lord shall not impute sin."
Mm-hmm. All right. So what are your thoughts?
I think one of the first thing, like, just with a running head start in terms of, you see at the end of 3 when he talks about the boasting, he said, can you boast? No, you can't boast.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that you are justified by faith apart from the deeds of the law. And then he goes into 4 verse 1, he says, what shall we say then? Abraham our father has found according to the flesh, right? So, and I think, and then he goes for, if Abraham was justified by works, he has something to boast about, but not before God. So he's saying there is no boasting. At the end of chapter 3, he's like, there's no way you can boast because it's not of anything you can do, right? There's no works. You're only justified by faith, like you guys were speaking about. So this then, as he's talking about that, it's only by faith. So now you're seeing, in keeping with the same diatribe of what Paul is kicking, right? In terms of like, this was like the typical philosophical method of argumentation when, okay, we're going to have this imaginary talk. I'm going to present my premise, and then you're going to present your counter premise or your objections and your, so there's the thing is like, you're saved by faith alone. So now the imaginary guy, or what they were actually saying then is that, so what are you talking about? We're supposed to be able to boast. We got our father here, Abraham. Mm-hmm. What are you going to say about him? He was a faithful man, and look at all the things he's done. He created the nation. He was the patriarch. He was all these things. And not only that, they also taught during that time that Abraham kept all the laws, that he was perfect. That was tradition. Mind you, Paul was well rooted in this. He was part of the Sanhedrin, right? So they taught that Abraham kept all the laws. Even before the laws came, he kept them all before they even came on the scene. Right. And that, not only was he perfect, he also was the patriarch, of the nation. He was sinless, and he's the one that was at the entrance of the gates to heaven, telling, Jews come in, Gentiles stay out. So
that was their tradition.
That was their tradition. So all of this is said. So now Paul is addressing this. He's like, what shall we say then about Abraham? Let's bring this guy up. Who you think so highly of? How was he justified?
Right.
Was it because of works? Then he goes into this. No, he believed God.
Right. So now his audience is Abraham, our father.
Right.
So now he's addressing, the Jewish people. And he's bringing up 2 witnesses from the Old Testament and the laws, right? Abraham and David. And he's still driving home that principle, right? The principle of justification by faith, and it's not of works, right? And God is not going to be in debt to man, right? If a person goes to work, then, right, you're supposed to receive your pay, your wages, right? So that idea is the opposite of grace, right? So based on your works, if it was based on your works, then God would owe this salvation, or God would owe these things to man. But that's not the principle that justification rests on, right? It's by faith. It's not by works.
And those two words right there, one, boast, and then the debt. Can you imagine standing before God boasting in yourself? And then saying, God, okay, I did this, so now you owe me this, you owe me this. So the more you mature in your walk, and the better relationship you have with the Lord, these things are like, I would never even think about boasting before God or telling him he owes me anything.
Right.
You know, because of that grace that we swim in. Those words right there stand out to me as very powerful and very prideful. If there's anyone that's boasting or saying that God owes them anything, you guys need to sort of rethink things.
And Genesis 15:6 says, and he believed the Lord, he being Abraham, and he accounted it to him for righteousness.
See, and it's great that you brought that back up, because that is perfect. Because it said that he believed God and he was accounted to him for righteousness. So, and you said in Genesis 15, I'm happy that we went through this before and we saw the life of Abraham. We saw how he started off feebly work. He was supposed to go to, to Canaan. He stopped at Haran and he was lying, and we saw that he was just, a fallen man, just like all of us. But it said that he was accounted to him for righteousness. So one thing is that the accounted is an accounting word, right? It was credited to him. That means it was given to him, it was imputed to him. His belief, that showed that he was righteous because he believed in God, right? And this was before 430 years before the law came and 14 years before circumcision.
Right.
So that's a big deal that he was already seen. And he said accounted as right. That means he's seen perfect. He was justified. Not just I see it twice over. Not just you have never sinned, also as if you've always obeyed. So you've never sinned and you've always obeyed. So now you are double righteous in God's eyes.
Right.
So this is how Abraham's already seen. And the funny thing is that we know he fell after that multiple times. He lied after that. He did all these things, but he was already seen.
That's right.
Perfect and righteous.
That brings up a question. Is that how we're seen? As if we've always been perfect? Because I've never heard that before. That part of your justification, I get it, just as if you've never sinned. But does God now not ever remember on everything that we've done before? Is that...
It's thrown in the sea of forgetfulness.
Yeah.
I think so. But when we get further into Romans, one of the things that, I'll go into a little bit, but with the whole predestination and foreordination and foreknowledge, the way I see it is that, we're all on the one highway, right? And we get on this highway from birth, being children of Adam, we headed straight to hell, right? Going on fire, right? And then when God interrupts our lives and we get saved and we give our life to Christ, right? So at that moment, it's like you create the parallel road, right? So from that parallel road, so that gives you a new beginning. That's when he says he sees you as always perfect, and you have a new future because you're going straight to heaven. So now you've been predestined. So that's what that predestined is from the foundation of the world, he saved us. You know what I'm saying? So it's I'm thinking, so he's changing, he's rewriting your past and giving you a new future. So it's so your path is totally different. It's almost like a parallel universe type of thing. So that's how I see it. That's how I'm able to understand it, where now you're seeing, that's why you're seeing perfect. It's not at the moment of salvation. I think at the moment of salvation, you see perfect, but he already rewrites your past.
And also it's not on your righteousness.
Right.
Right? We're in Christ. So Christ is perfect, infinite perfection. So God is seeing you in that. So it's as if you never sinned.
Yeah. But on the other hand, there was a point in Christ's life where he wasn't perfect and he wasn't righteous. And that's when the sins of man were thrown on him at the cross. You know what I mean? So I feel how can you say, I don't know, it's just interesting the way the framework of how you're saying that.
Maybe you framed that wrong. Not that he wasn't, but it was put on him.
Right.
The unrighteousness of mankind was put on him.
Yeah. So at that point, he was not righteous, right? He was a sacrifice at that point. He took our place. The wrath of God was thrown on him because he wasn't righteous at that moment. Because he was full of sin. Am I saying that wrong?
I don't know if I would say it.
Yeah,
the way he's
I understand
worded
what
it.
you're saying.
Yeah, we get what
You
you're
know what I'm saying?
I don't know
Like
if I would word it that way, because
because didn't he have to?
The scripture says, he was accursed.
Cursed,
At that
yeah.
moment, because anybody who hung on the tree
Right.
was accursed. So that's how the Lord saw him, so that he was able to pour out
the
his wrath on him.
yeah,
but I wouldn't say that he wasn't righteous.
Yeah, he himself,
You understand what I'm saying? I would say at that moment, like the word says, he was accursed.
he was able to be cursed.
Right, he was able to be cursed because he was hanging on a tree. You understand what I'm saying? That's what the word says. But I wouldn't say that he wasn't righteous.
He never sinned.
Because if he wasn't righteous at any time, he wouldn't be able to resurrect.
Right.
Because that's what was able, that was the power of the resurrection, that Christ was the unblemished lamb.
Because the unrighteousness wasn't his.
Right.
It was mine.
It was
Yeah.
ours,
And
right?
it was yours.
Right.
And it was, so he was able to pay for that, right? And I think we go into that, and maybe in the later chapters, Paul kind of goes into that.
It's
But I understand what you're saying, but maybe it's just the wording of.
It's like, again, you gotta understand, he's paying a debt. So it's like, okay, so you're debt, and they say, we're going to the creditor, I pay for it. But it was never my debt.
Right.
It was always your
Crazy.
debt.
Right.
Yeah, but when God's wrath came upon him, God was pleased
Right, no, I understand.
because he was destroying sin,
Right,
in
but
mankind.
But it wasn't his sin.
But it wasn't his
But he took it upon himself.
Right, so that's what I'm saying.
So I'm trying to say, how can you separate him taking that sin upon himself as if he did it
Again,
and I didn't?
just listen.
You know?
You have to understand, him going on the cross was to pay a debt. So again, so the debt is yours. But when we go to the creditor, I pull out the money, I write the check, I pay for it.
Yeah,
You
I
understand
get
what I'm
that.
saying? So listen, I paid for the debt, but it was never my debt. You gotta understand the reason why Christ was on the cross, again, like this word says, at that moment he was accursed, so God was able to pour out that wrath on him because he was always righteous, he's always sinless. But when he was hanging on the tree, at that moment he was accursed. So God was able to pour out the wrath and he was able to pay our debt. But it was never his debt. He was paying our debt. But to be able to pay that debt, he had to be accursed. And that's what the whole hanging on the tree.
So what about when he says, "Why have you forsaken me?" Because the Lord couldn't be part of sin. God the Father could not be part of sin.
Right, because at that moment he was accursed.
Right.
At that
You're
moment
saying
hanging on the tree.
accursed, but
Right.
what's the difference between a curse and being full of sin?
What do you mean? What are you talking about? Full of sin? He
Our
was
sins.
Right, he had our right, at that moment he had our sins.
All right.
But
I
it was
mean,
never. But this,
I see what you're saying.
Right, it's just the wording when you say that he wasn't righteous, like that.
And
It's just the wording. Like we understand what you're saying.
You know what I mean? I don't
No,
wanna
we
ever-
understand what you're saying.
I don't
It's
wanna
just
come
a
out like a
wording.
heretic, but
Right.
I feel like I always assumed when he took our sins on him that it was as if he sinned.
No, he was
Because
just.
it was
No, he was
our
just
sins.
in our place. He was just in our
He was
place.
a substitution.
He was
for
the
us.
substitution for
Yeah,
our sin.
right.
You understand? But it was never his. He was always righteous. He was
Yeah, I
always
know it wasn't
righteous.
his.
But he just stood in our place. So like I said, if I go to the creditor is looking at me. I'm like, no, this is his debt. I'm just paying it. You know what I'm saying? So to the creditor, he's like, you know what I mean? So that's all it was. But
So Paul was able to show two examples of that principle, right? And David was the second example that he used.
right, Abraham was representing the race, and David was representing the royalty. Because that was the foundation of the Jews. They had that pride, and first it was racial. They had a racial pride that their nationality was above all other nationalities. That was through Father Abraham, and then also with David. Now they felt like they were royalty because David was the beginning of the kings and the passing down, and Christ would eventually come through that lineage. So. The way I'm looking at it is like Paul is like those things that you have pride in, those two men that you had so much pride in because of your race, and you thought you were kings, and you was a priesthood, you was above everybody else. Those two men saw that the only way they were justified was through faith. It had nothing to do with the law. It had nothing to do with their race. It had nothing to do with where they stood in the world. If they thought they were, the supreme race and all of that national pride, it wasn't about that. Those two men that y'all look up to so much, they always understood that. Justification came through faith.
So in verse 5 it says, "But to him who does not work, but believes on him," right? That him being the man Jesus Christ, "who justifies the ungodly, his faith is accounted for righteousness." Who does not work, but believes. That's the principle of faith.
Word.
Could you guys think of any examples? Because I can think of a few of
I mean,
work-based, like
let Ralph go.
people tell you
all the work-based.
people tell you, you gotta believe in Jesus Christ, and you gotta do this.
You gotta hand out pamphlets.
You gotta hand out
Yeah,
pamphlets.
stand on the train for 5 hours.
Or you have to speak in tongues.
Or you have to.
Who does this?
Or you have to obey the Sabbath.
Or you gotta obey the Sabbath.
The Sabbath day. Yep.
So would you see that as works, or would you see that as adding to the gospel message of Jesus Christ?
If that is part of being saved, yes. Because like Paul says, you can't judge nobody. People are coming from all different aspects. If someone feels like, okay, I want to follow the Sabbath, such and such, that's their thing. Paul says you don't judge them. You don't judge people on their holidays and their feasts and their diet. But if you're including that part of salvation to be saved, yes, that is works-based.
And like you said, that is a majority of different religions that you see. Like you mentioned, Jehovah's Witness, they specifically claim you have to do these, passing out the pamphlets, you got to go door to door, we already know the doctrine is heresy because they don't believe that Jesus is God incarnate. They believe he's Michael the Archangel, so that's already a problem, but in terms of the works, they believe that you have to work for salvation.
Yeah.
You have the Hebrew Israelites on the corners. They believe that you have to keep the laws. And specifically, we read that it is impossible. That you think that you could keep these laws, you've already broken every single law.
But real quick, chapter 3, and this is crazy. We read this a bunch of times, right? Chapter 3, verse 21. "But now the righteousness of God apart from the law." And then over here we're reading, "But him who does not work but believes on him," right? Seeing that faith is the catalyst, right? Seeing that faith is the principle for salvation.
And it's about the object of the faith,
Jesus.
Yeah, it says on him.
Right.
So the focus is always supposed to be Christ-centered. It's not supposed to be around anything else. It's not supposed to be around the Sabbath. It's not supposed to be around how many hours you clocked in on your evangelism and knocking on the doors or screaming on the corners that everybody's gonna die. That's not your nationality. It's not. It's always, the object of the faith is Jesus Christ. It says believes on him. Right. So if you do not believe in Jesus Christ, you are not justified.
And that's the work, right? We read that in John.
John
right? He says,
6:29.
"For this is the work,
right? Yep.
that you believe on me, whom the Father has sent."
Yep.
He said, "This is the work." Because remember, they said, "So how do we get saved?" He said, "What's the work we must do?" And Jesus said, "This is the work, that you believe."
That's it. That's the gospel.
That's the gospel.
That's it.
And when you go into Galatians, Paul, he defends that tooth and nail, right? Where he even, proclaims a curse to anybody that tries to fudge it, right? That tries to add to this gospel of Jesus Christ. He said, "Let him be accursed. Let him be accursed to hell." Because what you're doing is preventing people from getting justified. Because now you're muddying the water. And it's very subtle. Like a lot of these, cults, a lot of these false religions, is very subtle in the way it's delivered. Where you don't even realize that what you're believing has diluted the gospel. Threw in some work in there. You got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do this. Right? Some of those things are good, but like you said, once you marry it with the gospel of Jesus Christ and make it a requirement for you to receive that right standing in front of God is heresy.
So what about those that may not say that you need works for salvation, but that the more pious you are, the more likely you are to be blessed by God? Is that a works-based mentality as well?
If you're talking about blessing?
Yeah, just God's blessings on your life, not salvation.
No, yeah. Once the gospel is only about salvation, right? And getting a right standing in front of God. If you want to talk about blessing, right? When you mean pious, what? To live right, to live according to your standing?
Yeah.
Then yeah, I agree with that.
So those that say it's if I don't mess up, if I don't sin, then God's more likely to bless me.
No,
Not.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, no.
Nah, the scripture says it rains on the just and the unjust alike.
Yeah.
Everything is of the grace of God, but when you read a book like Deuteronomy, the Lord plainly tells you, you obey, you're gonna receive blessings. You don't, you're disobedient, you're gonna receive, curse. So, that I think that's just logic. That's just
right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And the way I look at it is just based on the wisdom of God. If you follow the wisdom of God and you apply it in your life, you're going to be blessed.
Yep.
Yeah, but I look at it as a dad who's raising children who may still be misbehaving. You're still going to feed them. You're still going to have a roof over their head.
No,
You know what I mean? You're still going to be blessing them. So I don't know. Some people may just be legalistic and and may impute on themselves something where they have to be good in order for God to bless them. And I just want them to know that that's not the case.
Yeah, once you deal with legalism.
Yeah, like there's a legalism even in the church
Yeah.
amongst brothers. Like some people, when they hear I don't have a TV, all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, he's more pious than I am, and that's not it.
No.
You know what I mean?
Nah, you
That's
believe
not
that.
how-
You believe that. You don't got a TV that you better than that. You're in the spirit. You say it all the time. You're like, yo, Mike, you're not in the spirit because you start watching that football in the back. You blasted me for fantasy.
Fantasy football is demonic.
You see?
I used to be addicted
You
to
see?
fantasy
You
football.
see? You see how it goes? You see how you try to switch it up real quick? Nah, I ain't pious, baby. It ain't all that. And then as soon as it come up, he blasts us. Yeah. Nah. You ain't gonna get away with that. You ain't gonna get away with that, dog. Get out of here.
The same.
Alright, so let's any other thoughts or we should move on?
Yes, but blessed are those whose lawless deeds are forgiven. We deal with a forgiving God and whose sins are covered. And that's what happens when you believe in Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. The sins are there, but it's covered. They're covered by the blood.
So that's from Psalms.
Psalms
Right?
32.
And that was David.
Yeah. Psalms 32. You want me to read that? Or
No.
It's right there. But the interesting thing, I love the way Paul does it. This guy is so tactical. So the first thing he does is he brings in Abraham before the law and to show you, and we know all his failures, and he was accounted to him as faithful, because it was accounted because he believed in God, right? And God was faithful. And he brings in David after the law. And he says the same thing to him because this whole prayer was after his greatest sin. Like this dude broke practically all the commandments.
Right.
Not only he coveted Bathsheba, broke, that's one law, right? Then he committed adultery, her second law, right? Then he lied about it because he tried to keep a secret. That's 3 laws. Then he brought in Uriah, lied to him, and then got him murdered. That's 4, right? So you see, he did and he broke for not believing the first commandment, not trusting in God, not believing in God with all your heart, mind, and soul. So already there's 5 commandments, and that's idolatry. So that's 6. So he practically broke all the laws, and then but in this psalm, that's showing that he understood he was forgiven. Because what is this the sacrifice for breaking, murder, adultery, coveting, lying? Death. There is no sacrifice.
Right.
You would deserve the death penalty, right? He deserved death penalty, but he wasn't killed. So showing you that he was accounted righteous because of his faith. because he trusted in God.
And his Marcus, I think he was going over it, I think a couple episodes ago, where just looking forward. That's what the Old Testament prophets and the saints and all the believers, they were looking forward. They understood that there would be a sacrifice. They was looking forward to Jesus Christ. They was looking forward to that seed. So that was the concept that they understood, that God was forgiven, and that's how God was gonna forgive us and cover our sins. So it was a looking forward to Jesus Christ coming.
So David got it, right?
Abraham got it.
Abraham got it.
Uh-huh.
So now, let's read from 9 to 12.
Does this blessedness then come upon the circumcised only, or upon the uncircumcised also? For we say that faith was accounted to Abraham for righteousness. How then was it accounted? While he was circumcised or uncircumcised? Not while circumcised, but while uncircumcised. And he received the sign of circumcision, a seal of the righteousness of the faith which he had while still uncircumcised, that he might be the father of all those who believe, though they are uncircumcised, that righteousness might be imputed to them also, and the father of circumcision to those who not only are of the circumcision, but who also walk in the steps of the faith which our father Abraham had while still uncircumcised.
So then the idea might be, to a Jewish believer, like, okay, I'm starting to understand this faith principle that you're talking about, and Abraham did have that faith. He did believe in God. So this is cool for us, right? For Abraham and his chosen and the circumcised and the Jews. So the idea might be like, this is just for the Jews, because I think, like you mentioned earlier, that national pride, that thinking that, listen, the uncircumcised, you guys are not sharing in this privilege that we have. You understand what I'm saying? So that thought might have arisen in a Jewish believer's mind, with what Paul's kicking. So then Paul kind of goes into that, right? So he kind of does pose that question, like, is this only for the circumcision? Right? Is this only for the Jews? Is it only for the descendants of Abraham according to the flesh? Right? And he answers that.
Yeah, he said Abraham was justified before circumcision.
And I think Ralph mentioned it, right? 14 years before. Genesis 15 and 6 occurred 14 years before circumcision and 430 years before the law was given.
Right. He says in verse 11, he says, and he received the sign of circumcision, a seal of the righteousness of the faith which he had while still uncircumcised.
That's beautiful.
Had.
Right.
Yeah. He was.
No, that's a great point y'all bringing out, that you was accounted perfect and righteous before the circumcision, before the whole act. And that's why he's saying that it includes everybody, circumcised and uncircumcised, because he was uncircumcised and accounted. So that means that, before supposedly claimed to be a Jew,
he was a Gentile.
He was a Gentile.
Genius. I tell people that all the time.
He was faithful as a Gentile, and then he became circumcised, claiming, now this is the symbol of the Jewish nation. So now he was accounted righteous as a Gentile, and he's accounted righteous as a Jew. So that includes everybody.
Yep.
Falls under this banner of Abraham's faith, which was accounted to him, of this perfect righteousness through his faith.
So now when you look at it, that the act of circumcision was a sign to represent what he already had, which was that faith in God and believing in his word, right? And when we think back of that scene in Genesis 15:6, where God was like, nah, you're gonna have a son. It's not gonna be Ishmael. Your wife is gonna bear this seed. And so Abraham had to forego all natural whatever made sense in the natural form, because he knew my body was dead, my wife's body is dead. Naturally, this is impossible. But he accepted the word of God as true.
Yep.
Right? He was like, yo, what you're saying is true. Whatever I think, whatever I feel, your word takes precedence. And then the Lord was like, yo, this guy believes. And that was counted to his righteousness.
What's so dope here is as like I'm picturing the church in Rome, which is Gentile and Jew, just reading this letter out loud to each other. And then how the Gentiles must feel like they're included.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, wow, he died for me too. You know what I mean? And just picturing what that would be like. And obviously the Jews are everything that they believe so highly in is literally being destroyed, you know, step by step. And like Ralph said, Paul is just so tactical and strategic in this, and he's doing it in such a beautiful way that they can't argue. You know, they can't argue how we are made righteous and how the Gentiles are included into this beautiful gift.
Yeah. And one of the things I love about this whole circumcision, like you guys explained, that it was a sign, a symbol of, it's an outward sign and symbol of something that was already expressed internally.
Yeah.
Right? So he was declared righteous, and now this symbol to show that you've already been declared righteous, you know, very similar to like baptism, right? So, and the awesome thing that this was an outward sign, right? That, and he uses circumcision. And the reason why I like it is that you can't undo circumcision. You can't reverse it. So he's saying that this is a symbol now that I've declared you righteous and you can't undo it. That you are righteous because I called you righteous forever because I'm faithful and forever. And now could you imagine, like the way I was thinking as I'm reading through it, I'm imagining every time this guy went to use the bathroom or whatever, you see it every single day. There's not one morning you don't see it.
Yeah, that's graphic, man.
I know it's a little graphic, but could you imagine? Because think this dude is 99 years old and he went through a surgical procedure.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it was painful. There was blood loss, and now every morning I have to see this, and then I have to do this to my child, and now the whole nation every morning they have to see that this is the covenant that God made for us, and I have to see this every day. That God has declared you righteous because I believed Him forever. You know what I'm saying? So it's like the whole idea, like that already starts answering so many questions that people have, you know, in terms of losing salvation, these, all these things begin as you begin to understand and see the gravity of the symbolism that God is using to show people like, yo, this is serious here. You're gonna see it every day for the rest of your life. Of my love for you and my declaration of your perfection.
And that's a good point because of the question I brought up before about like your past sins. As a child being circumcised, you don't even know what you look like before the circumcision. You know what I mean? You don't even know what that sin was.
Right. And
maybe that's helps me explain how God sees us. You know, after we're made righteous, we have no idea what we look like before we were circumcised.
Amen.
So Abraham being the father of all who, like him, believe in God.
Yeah.
Right? So now you're seeing the similarities, right? Oh, you're like Abraham because you believe God. It's not saying, I don't think Paul is saying that the Gentiles are the natural descendants.
No,
that's not what
he's saying.
No. So there's no replacement. There's no the lineage of the Jews. Oh no, the Jews are the Jews, and they have a very special and unique place in God's plan, right? But he's a father to the Jews because they physically came from the line of Abraham.
He said in verse 1, according to the flesh.
According to the flesh.
Right.
And also, he's the father to all who believe because just like him, you have the same type of faith where you're able to take God at his word. Despite of, you know what I'm saying, yourself, your feelings, or your intellect, or whatever. You believe God at his word.
Yep.
And God sees that, and he imputes, credit you with righteousness.
Yep.
Alright? Any other thoughts in that section? So he's really driving home that point, that principle, right? And not trashing circumcision, but the gospel of the promise of God is so much more, right? The invisible is so much greater than the visible. And throughout the culture of the Jews, it kind of got twisted,
Right.
where the sign, the actual physical sign, became more important with the heart being regenerated, right? The transformation of the heart. That took a second back, way back seat to just this physical, right? The rituals, the high holies, all those things took precedence over the fact that it's a heart issue. Right? Your heart is supposed to change. You're supposed to believe God.
And I think he did that because circumcision was the first sign. You know, that was the first quote unquote work that was done, you know, in their culture. That was like that was the beginning of the nation, you know, like to be circumcised, because that's what separated them from all the other nations, because all the other nations wasn't circumcised. So that was a sign. That was the first sign. And I think he goes there because he's like, the gospel predates that. Predates that work. So it was never about works. What I'm kicking to you here was, you know, like you said, it was 14 years before he ever did an actual work. You know, so for 14 years, Abraham was justified. You know, and again, like he stresses it, the circumcision was just a sign. It was just to seal him, that God. It was that was God's way of showing Abraham, like, no, that faith that you had 14 years ago, no, it's sealed. Like you said, it can't be undone. Matter of fact, I'm gonna give you a sign. You know, and that's how, you know, God deals with us. But, you know, in his eyes, he's like, no, once you believe, you're good. You know, and everything else is just the fruits of that. So circumcision, it was just the fruits of Abraham's faith, you know, him following that. And that was just a sign between him and God. But I think, you know, Paul does it to show that, it predates your whole nationality. Everything that you guys stand on, that first work with circumcision, he was like, what I'm talking about predates that.
So it was never about works. And it's still never about works.
Never.
Ever. If you really think about that, it's salvation was and is not about works.
So you could clock all the hours you want. You could record every act you've done. You can have your book, you can have your journals. When it comes to salvation, it's never about work.
Yo, and just for the one person, the one man that might be out there thinking that we're talking about having an actual job, no, you must work. We're talking about legalism,
we're talking about salvation.
Salvation, like doing good in order for God to save you. That's the works we're talking about. If you don't have a job, go get a job. Provide for the fam.
Yeah, that was the spirit. I was like, where did that coming from? But yeah, somebody had to hear it. Nah, somebody got to hear it.
There was one person out there. One person.
I was like, you see, Mom? I know you. Keep getting on me. Drinking up all the Kool-Aid.
Alright, let me read this section. Verse 13. For the promise that he would be the heir of the world was not to Abraham or to his seed through the law, but through the righteousness of faith. For if those who are of the law are heirs, faith is made void and the promise made of no effect, because the law brings about wrath. For where there is no law, there is no transgression. So let's talk about that section. What y'all think?
Yeah. This it's important because a lot of people may think that this is saying that the law doesn't matter anymore. But the law was always, the law was beautiful in a way because it made people know that they were sinning, right? So that was why the law was given. It's before that people just didn't know that they were sinning, and so that's why the law is important. And however, it's saying that we're not saved through the law, which we've been saying for the last chapter and a half already. But what is so important here is that it's saying that for those people who still consider the law as a means to salvation, then that means that faith and the promise is made of no effect. and the promise is Jesus Christ. So what he did on the cross then is pointless, if we're saved through the law. And we can never take that away from our Lord and Savior, what he did for us. That's how I see that.
And the word promise there is, it's like a promise without condition. It's unconditional. So that promise that God had made to Abraham is, all he asked him to do was believe. And it didn't come with a condition, or he had to do this, he had to do that. There was no works ever involved. And, like you said about the law, the law did its job. The law was perfect because the law was never brought to justify us.
Exactly.
Because that's what Paul is stressing. Now, the justification always came through faith. It always came through faith. So the law, it didn't serve its purpose to justify you. It didn't serve its purpose to make you righteous. No, the law was there just to reveal that you was a sinner and that you had to believe in God through faith. That you could not follow the law. That's why God gave us the law, to show, this is my standards. Okay, you guys want to know my standards? Well, here's my standards. And, like we was reading before, everyone has fallen short. Everyone has sinned. Nobody can meet the standards of God if it comes to works. So, it's to drive you to faith and to drive you to have faith in the grace of God.
Yeah, this is also I like the when he brings it. I'm totally agreeing with everything y'all saying, and this is also bringing the point of Abraham believing before the law, like you mentioned earlier. So now what he's doing, that he's bringing in Moses on the witness stand. So he brought Abraham on the witness stand, right? Of that him believing, and that's what justified him and saved him. He brought David on the witness stand, their king, the royalty like you brought out, and then we saw all his sins and failures and destruction, and then now he's bringing Moses on the witness stand, saying, look, yeah, he came with the law, but the law cannot justify, because then that'll make everything void, because Abraham still was counted righteous 430 years before the law. So he's bringing all three witnesses to these Jews, because the Jews, that they held Moses at a high side. It was Abraham, Moses, David. Those were the three people they looked towards to as a guide for their lives. So now he's bringing Moses in with the law and said, the law demanded perfect obedience, but that does not grant you, access to the kingdom or salvation, because it was always through faith. Because if it was through that, then you're trying to exclude the Gentiles. And no, I can't exclude the Gentiles, because that's why I'm telling you, it has to be through the faith of Abraham.
Right. And he's saying, listen, the promise wasn't based on the law.
Right.
Right. These things came way, 14 years, 430 years later. Those things coming in later is not going to invalidate the promise that came from before.
Right.
So the way he just went through circumcision, so he was like, listen, if justification has nothing to do with circumcision, then when you bring the law in, the law had even less to do with justification. Matter of fact, the law brings wrath.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That's what he's kind of kicking to him. Like, let's this understanding, let's separate all this stuff, right? Your justification is by faith alone. These things that came later, it's not canceling out the promise that came before. Right? And then he goes into, the law. The law came in order to show transgression, like Ann said, you're breaking the law. And what happens when you break the law? Wrath. That's all the
penalty.
Matter of fact, the law brought more wrath than it did blessings.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So when you look at the law, it's associated more with wrath than it is with any type of blessing.
Right. Because it has a righteous standard that only one person could fulfill.
Right. Because
the Christ.
Because he already broke down how universally mankind, you guys are just wicked. We're all wicked. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And it's interesting because, and with the law, there was no mercy or grace. It's just pure justice and pure wrath. And that's why even within the law, that's why he brought in this provisional sacrificial method.
Yeah.
Because you could not keep the law, so he says, all right, let me give you the sacrificial method. So because the sacrificial method was to point you to Christ.
That's the grace.
That's the grace. Because the law, you're not going to keep it. It's going to bring wrath, judgment, condemnation, and death.
Right.
But you know what? I got a provision for you. But that provision was pointing to
Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, because that's what the Lord. Anytime you deal with the law, it's condemnation and guilt. That's the first thing. It's like when you break the law, you get pulled over, and you know you were speeding, or you know you ran that red light. Who's the first thing? You like, oh, damn, God.
Man, what you want? What you want after they catch
Want
you?
grace and mercy.
My wife is pregnant in the back.
Yeah.
Nah.
Word up.
The Lord don't care.
You start patting your eyes and you're button that top button. I know some of y'all do it. Cause you want a little grace, you want a little mercy, so you saw a little flesh. But when you break the law, that's what you always feel. When you fall short of God's standards, that's what you feel. You feel guilt, you feel shame, you feel condemnation. But with grace and mercy,
That's also true, because in Galatians it tells us that those who follow the law, when they sin, they fall out of grace. Where when you are not following the law and you're all about Jesus Christ, when you sin, you fall into grace. So there's a difference between falling out and falling in. And how beautiful is it to know that when we do mess up, we fall into God's grace.
Right.
And then the law also brings boasting and
Yes.
self-confidence, and that's why that's how cults are formed. That's why every time you see a cult, you just got to see the law.
Right.
There's always a law, because now when you keep that standard, you feel good about yourself.
Right.
There's a self-confidence. There's a
Right.
self-righteousness. That's what and that's where all these that's where cults come from. There's always the law always creeps in. It's never fully dependent on the finished work of Christ. There's always something that has to get added to it, because man want to feel like they accomplished something. Man want to be self-righteous. That's deep down inside. That's just the heart of man.
And I mean, and another. Oh, you gonna say something, Mark?
Nah.
Now, and another thing also is that the law, like you said, it brought condemnation and wrath and judgment. But also, when the Lord did come with Moses, he was also establishing a nation. And every single nation had civil laws. Like, people don't realize that the 613 laws that he gave, as you read through Exodus and Deuteronomy, that's him establishing a nation where there were civil laws, dietary laws, how you deal with your neighbors, if they lose animals, and all these things.
Right.
These were things in order how to run a country. The same way, like, the laws that we have here are not the same laws that's in Europe, that's in France, that's in Africa, because they have certain civil laws in order to protect, the denizens, the citizens of the community. So this is the same thing where God is creating a nation, setting them apart from all the other nations. So he's like, okay, these are the laws, these are the boundaries to set you apart from the other nations, so that people may see that I'm working through you as a nation, because I'm establishing a nation. So I'm giving you civil laws, I'm giving you dietary laws. So all these things was to set you apart, but not to boast and to be prideful, to say I'm better than you because I don't shave my beard. I'm better than you because I don't eat pork. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So this is establishment of a nation, establishing, this is the constitution of a nation. So it's like, so these are all the things that's playing in part, in establishing the law, but people get it totally twisted.
So the law is good.
I'm an agitator.
I'm about to ask you. You're gonna do it better than me, guys.
You talk to somebody and you're like, yo, you want to get some wood? There's pork in it?
Oh, that's what you was talking about?
I'll be like, you don't eat pork? And you be like, nah. You just gotta ask them why.
Because the swine ain't divine, baby. Come on, baby.
No swine will touch the lips of mine. It always come with a bar.
Because the swine ain't divine. It's something spiritual. It's spiritual behind the swine. It's not divine. But you trying to say the law is good? You trying to say the laws are good?
Yeah, I'm gonna go eat a pork sandwich after
You trying to say the laws are good?
His
laws good.
The laws are perfect. The laws are good. Laws are great.
laws are meant to be followed.
Yeah, that's it. I just want to know, because we living in a lawless time.
Yeah,
and even the Antichrist is called a man of lawlessness.
Laws provide freedom. People think laws provide bondage.
Safety.
Provide safety.
Yep.
Yeah, we got red lights, because could you imagine there was no red lights?
Word.
Anybody ever drove through the West Indies, the 80 Jamaica?
I have. It was a thrill.
What is it, like Mario go-kart?
you're a thrill seeker, drive in Haiti.
Why you always feel like you about to fall off the road when you're driving to places, dog?
It's adrenaline rush.
Yo, for real. Laws are good.
Laws are good.
Boundaries are good.
Yep.
All right, so let's do 16 to 22, or finish. I guess we could finish the chapter.
Therefore it is of faith that it might be according to grace, so that the promise might be sure to all the seed, not only to those who are of the law, but also to those who are of the faith of Abraham, who is the father of us all. As it is written, I have made you a father of many nations, in the presence of him whom he believed, God, who gives life to the dead and calls those things which do not exist as though they did, who, contrary to hope, in hope believed, so that he became the father of many nations, according to what was spoken, so shall your descendants be. And not being weak in faith, he did not consider his own body already dead, since he was about 100 years old, and the deadness of Sarah's womb. He did not waver at the promise of God through unbelief, but was strengthened in faith, giving glory to God, and being fully convinced that what he had promised, he was also able to perform, and therefore it was accounted to him for righteousness. Now it was not written for his sake alone that it was imputed to him, but also for us. It shall be imputed to us who believe in him who raised up Jesus our Lord from the dead, who was delivered up because of our offenses and was raised because of our justification.
Boom. Boom.
You see how he correlates believing in Jesus Christ and that same
Faith.
manner of faith
Yep.
with Abraham, the father of faith?
Yep.
That's crazy.
He starts to weave it in early where he's like, Abraham, the father of us all. As you go through the chapter, and then he's gonna go to Adam, but he starts to show, he starts to just weave in this certain part of the theology, which is beautiful to me, which brings in Jesus Christ perfect. But no, I agree.
And he gave the example, right? I mentioned it before. Abraham there, right? Probably thinking about, all those relevant factors that comes into a man and a woman having a child. Age, nature, science, whatever you want to call it, right? And he came to the conclusion that the promise that God said outweighs that.
Yep.
What you're saying outweighs every probability that I'm thinking about, right? I'm thinking about my age. I'm thinking about my body. My body's dead. My wife's womb is donezo. But after taking all those things into consideration, he concluded the divine promise is greater. That doesn't make sense. And he correlates that to the gospel of Jesus Christ. He was like, this was also written for our sakes, right? The same way that righteousness was imputed on Abraham, and now he has this perfect, infinite, perfect standing in front of God. He was like, you too, because you believe in him who was raised up. Jesus, our Lord Jesus Christ was raised up from the dead. That doesn't make sense.
Right.
Right? And we go through it, we hear about it, you hear the debates. That measure of faith, that quality of faith that we have, that you're able to have now in 2022, is the same quality of faith that Abraham had.
Yeah, when you read verse 3, when it says Abraham believed God, the word believe there is like saying amen.
That's it, it's settled.
That's it. Like the way Abraham believed, and I have to apologize to you, because I think we went at it in Genesis about that. I was reading it and I was like, I gotta humble myself tomorrow. I can't sit for that.
Wait, for which part?
About Abraham's faith. Like, I think, I'm not sure, but I think we went back and forth about it. I think he was saying it and I was like, nah. what I was leading to wasn't wrong, but I totally understood what he was trying to tell me when I started reading this because of that word. You know, it says when Abraham believed God, like the sense of faith he had was like, it's done.
Settled.
Like God said it is going to happen, that's it. So even though that he may have wavered here and there, he may not have been perfect because he's not perfect, right? You know, he's not perfect, but about his faith, he didn't waver in that. He was like, nah, this is what God said, you know, about this. And like you said, it doesn't make sense because, you know, when it was brought to him, it was like, you know, me and my wife, we're done. We're dead. We're practically dead. Like the promise that you're giving us, it can't be fulfilled because it goes against everything. It goes against the laws of nature. It goes against the biology, common sense, science. It goes against everything you're telling me. But Abraham believed. And, you know, it's like what you're saying is like the same faith that we have in Jesus Christ. You know, him coming as a man and he's walking the earth. Because we see the frailty of man around us all day. So when you deal with non-believers, they're like, a man walked this earth and he was perfect. He ain't sinned. He never sinned. And to understand the standard of that is perfectly the Sermon on the Mount. You know, Christ gives the law. He gives a full understanding of the law on the Sermon on the Mount. Where he's like, it's not about you hate. It's not about you killing your brother. It's about if it's in your heart. If you hate your brother, you fell short of the standard. So to think about a man who walked this earth, you know, Christ came as a man and walked this earth, and he was totally sinless. It's that same faith. Like that's how Abraham saw the promise that God gave him. Like what? Like nah, man. I'm 100 years old. I'm done. I'm not gonna have no child. But it's the same faith that we have. Like, you know, Christ coming as a man, stripping himself of everything, walking this earth, being blameless, and being that perfect sacrifice for us. That is radical. It is. It's radical, bro.
I mean, I wrote a couple of things just describing his faith. I mean, just in keeping with what you guys saying, like, the first thing I wrote down about Abraham's faith was God was the object. And that's the biggest thing is that you hear a lot of people, people just throw the word around. Have faith.
Have faith. Have faith. What? And what?
You know what I'm saying? Which is total nonsense. Like, he had an object of his faith. You know, it wasn't Jehovah, it was El Shaddai. It was all, you know, who God revealed himself to Abraham. He's like, so that was the object of his faith. That's how come, you know, he was able to have that settled. And it was settled in his mind because he knew he was the God of the impossible. Like you said, he was considered dead, but his faith was in God.
And it says God who gives life to the dead and calls those things which do not exist as though they did.
Right.
These are spiritual, heavenly things that doesn't necessarily always make sense in the natural.
And he's pointing towards resurrection.
That's right.
That's what it is.
That's what it was all about.
That's what it was all. You start to see him start to weave in resurrection because, you know, that is where our faith is. Our faith is in a resurrected Lord.
Right.
It's not in a dead Lord that's in a tomb somewhere in Jerusalem. No. Our faith is in that Christ resurrected because he was perfect and he was holy. And our debts are paid. Right. You know, his resurrection, that's what his resurrection represents. That, my debt is paid. So that's why me having faith in that, God credits that to me. Like, your slate is wiped clean because Jesus Christ paid for that. But my faith is in that resurrection. That's like my receipt. You know that. And Jesus Christ has paid for my sins.
Like what you're saying in verse 13, he even alludes to that where he says, for the promise that he would be the heir of the world was not to Abraham or to his seed. Singular.
Right.
Which is referring to the promised seed, Jesus Christ. And then again, you bringing up the fact that Abraham's like, you're the God that could, gives life to the dead or make things that are not.
That's what they are.
Going back to Genesis.
Right.
That's why he had that faith, but that's why he had that faith also to resurrect, to sacrifice Isaac.
That's the whole thing.
Right. That was his mind frame the whole time.
Listen, that was already settled.
Yeah.
Listen, we
Hold
understand.
on. I think my brains just got blown to smithereens. That resurrection.
He understood the gods that he was serving, dog.
Yep. And then the promised seed would be resurrected.
Right.
That's Abraham's faith.
That was his theology back.
He understood.
So now,
Boom.
based on his faith, right? Based on his faith, and we see that he had a genuine, pure faith that God said, he imputed righteousness. You bring up his son Isaac, we're able to see how his faith affected his walk.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? Like now, is the way you're living corresponding to what you believe? Right now, and he believed in a God that was all powerful and is able to do these things, and that he was able to just stand on that and just move forward.
Yeah, that was his works was a fruit of that. Right. It was never to justify him. It was never to make him righteous. Because he understood that this is a God that can resurrect my son from the dead.
This is nothing.
This is I'll sacrifice him. I'll put him on the altar. And again, it always goes back to that faith. It's not about his works. His works was just a result of his faith.
Sure, man. Yeah, man. Any last? So what do we know about salvation, justification? It's not about works, man.
Nope.
It was never about works.
Yeah.
Works was never a part of the deal.
Nope. Never.
If you want to be in the right standing before God, you're not going to get there by trying to gain it through works, thinking that God is going to owe you something. You have to accept it on the principle of faith. This free gift, you have to accept it.
You have to just freely receive it.
Yeah, you got people that's, I believe in Jesus Christ when I see him.
Alright.
I mean, you will, but it's too late.
You have a lot of people that, I believe in this Messiah, when I see him, and it's like, no, it's the other way around. Like, he's your creator. And that's why I always, in my mind frame, I'm like, that's so arrogant. Like, he's your creator. It's like, no, he has to prove himself to me, before I do this and before I do that. And at the end of the day, that's a lie too. Because Jesus, like what Paul says in Hebrews, Jesus Christ is the final statement of God. If you don't believe that he came and he died and he resurrected, you're never gonna believe, though.
So that now, Abraham was the father of faith. Like the example you brought up, you don't have the faith, you're not cut from the same faith cloth as Abraham. For you to say things like that.
Right.
So you're not, you probably believe whatever you believe, or I'll believe him when I see him. All right, that's not the faith.
That's not the
of Abraham.
Right.
That's why I was talking about Abraham is the father of faith, and then at the end of this, it compares like the quality of faith that you guys have because you believe that Jesus Christ died and he was raised from the dead on the third day. That's the same.
That's the faith,
dog. Same pure, undiluted Abraham faith. That's why you guys are the same.
That's the faith, B.
Anything else?
Anything else is
dog.
Yeah. Like you said, it muds it up.
Oh, you have to do this plus this. You have to add work into it.
Yeah.
That's not the same type of faith.
That's not the same faith. Nope.
Wow.
Yes. Yes. I get it.
It's not the same principle.
No,
like we're dealing with a principle of faith.
That's the highest.
If you adulterate it, it's not the same.
Yeah, and you gotta understand that is uncut, pure. That stuff.
It ain't been stepped on.
That ain't been stepped on. Ain't no baking soda. What's it? That's straight from Bolivia.
Yo.
Colombia, dog. That's uncut.
You get
That's
it.
the purest form of faith.
You get it now. God is like, I'm God. You don't believe me?
Yes.
Yo, you don't believe me?
You
You don't believe I could do this?
Yes.
You don't believe?
You don't believe the words I'm telling you?
Matter of fact, I'm gonna give you everything that you need in order to believe. I'm not even making it hard.
Right.
Right.
You want archaeology? Here. You want manuscripts? Here. And you want prophecy? I'm gonna tell you what's gonna happen before it happens.
And you and you
Y'all still don't believe?
Yep.
That's
You're
crazy.
not. You don't have that quality of faith, though.
Yeah.
And you're not gonna get in.
No. That's why Jesus Christ coming and dying on the cross, that was the ultimate sign, bro.
Dog, what else you want me to do?
After that, it's shut.
Right.
I gave my son to
I
die
gave my
for you.
son to die for you, and I hung him up. I put
You know
him
they
on
want-
top. I put him in front of the whole world, baby.
Yeah, they wanted to grab him off the throne so they could sit on it.
That's all it is.
That's all it
Yeah,
is.
you want to be God. It goes, and like I said, it always goes back to Adam and Eve. You know, because that was the faith that they had to have to remain in the garden. Because you never saw death.
Just believe what God said.
Just believe.
You never saw death. You didn't understand. You didn't know none of that. But every time you walked past that tree and you didn't partake, it was just because he said it.
Yep.
That was it. And that's always been the faith. Because God said it. Not because you saw it or you understand or you know. Nah, dog, it ain't that deep. Y'all be making it too deep. Nah, real talk, I'm lying. Yeah. That's why on that day, that's what you're gonna be judged by. It's like your dog, it was never that deep. I was always the same guy from the garden.
Yeah.
Look, I said it, you believe it, even if you never saw it, even if you don't understand it. That's not my beef with you. My beef is because I said it, you didn't believe it. That was it.
And I left you all the evidence. Creation,
Yep.
the sun,
And
the
then
stars,
from the
moon,
fall,
the fall.
But from the fall, like you said, I went through every dispensation with you.
Yeah.
I went through the law. I went through the kings. I went through everything.
Yeah.
Where, again, it goes back to Hebrews where Paul was like, yo, he spoke to us in diverse times, in diverse things, through the prophets and the law. And then now he gave us his son. That's why Paul is like, yo, bro, you don't believe Jesus Christ coming and what he did? You're not going to believe it. It's just like with Abraham and Lazarus and the rich man.
Mm.
You remember? Where he was like, yo, go back and tell my brothers. He was like, yo, bro, he got the Lord and the prophets. If you don't believe that, he ain't gonna believe him.
Right.
So it's fake.
So, Father, we thank you that you humble us, each one of us individually in graceful, loving way, Lord, that we got to the point where we believe, Lord, and we bow our knees to you. And we know your heart is that everybody would believe, Lord, and you made a way for salvation that's on the principle of faith alone. And if anybody would accept your word at face value and believe it, that you would credit them with your righteousness, the righteousness of Jesus Christ, Lord. And our heart is, if somebody was listening to this episode, going through Romans chapter 4 with us, Lord, that you will highlight the word in a way that they've never seen it before, and let it click in their hearts and in their mind, Lord. And we pray that people, especially in the times that we're in right now, Lord, with just the craziness happening, that people would accept you as their Lord and Savior and be righteous, and we'll see them in heaven. We'll give them a high five because they was like, yo, I saw this episode. Lord, you are good. We'll be careful to just continue to give you all the glory and exalt your name. Thank you for today. Thank you for that all the equipment stayed on. And we got through this episode. And this in the name of Jesus Christ we pray.
Amen.
Amen.
Peace.